Okay. And boom. Okay. So I'm going to kick it off real quick. First of all, thank you guys so much for joining the call. Today's call is about emotional eating. And I want to share with you that somebody does not have their phone muted. I'm so sorry. Let's see here. Let's see if we got them all muted here. All right, I want to share with you how this particular topic came to be, right? So what I do in my job as a health coach is I work to help people to establish healthy behaviors, right? And in the process of doing that, you can also potentially stop unhealthy behaviors. And I went through the process last month with a fellow peer. I'm going through a book review with a fellow peer, and the book is Tiny Habits. And chapter 7 of this book flips everything upside down, because instead of building these amazing habits for health and well-being, chapter 7 says, well, what about those habits we want to stop? So things like emotional eating, things like smoking, etc. And the author, BJ Fogg, goes into the details of that. This was just, to me, so practical and important to what I do as a health coach. And I thought, with trepidation, I'm going to broach this topic of emotional eating because it's potentially a very slippery slope. And I'll get into the disclaimer of how I'm not a therapist and a counselor, but there may be some value, and I appreciate you guys being on the call so we can discuss that. This is definitely something that my friends, myself, it's pretty normal that sometimes we struggle with the topic of emotional eating, various clients from time to time as well. And so I'm excited about going through the process and just kind of going through. I did some research on it and just sharing with you what I found, and then dialoguing with you guys on the call about it as well. So as I mentioned, the disclaimer, this presentation is for educational and informational purposes only, and solely as a self-help tool for you to use on your own. I am not providing medical, psychological, or nutritional therapy advice. You should not use this information to diagnose or treat any health problems or illnesses without consulting your own medical practitioner. Always seek the advice of your own medical practitioner and/or a mental health provider about your specific health situation. For my full disclaimer, please go to coachmikethomas.com. And that's who I am. I am a health coach. I help people in general change a lot of things towards better health and wellness. But big picture, my niche is really I help people to lose weight in the pursuit by way of incorporating more plants into their diets, right? I have a one-on-one health coaching program that I offer. I also this summer will be offering a group coaching program. And there's more about me in the description of this video as well. This call, as all the calls that we've had, and now Claire, who brought this idea up 3 years ago, we're now in our starting our 4th year of having a once a month WLS group coaching call. So thanks, Claire, for the idea from 3 years ago. We have it almost every month. Usually every year we have it about 10 or 11 times. This is all about support, right? Just support, guidance. It's us together, working together to help us to be our best, most healthy self. And the last thing about this slide is I'm a board certified health and wellness coach, pharmacist. I'm also board certified in lifestyle medicine. The QR code on the screen is just some more information about me if you're interested. So on to the topic of emotional eating, right? So not necessarily Webster's definition, but emotional eating is consuming food in response to emotions rather than hunger, right? Just simplicity's sake, right? But is this normal, emotional eating? It's essential to recognize that occasional emotional eating is normal behavior, right? So probably all of us from time to time experience this. However, when it becomes predominant or habitual response to emotions and it interferes with overall well-being or health goals, individuals may seek support from health professionals or coaches to help develop healthier coping mechanisms. This is all about coping and how are we coping. Health coaches can play a valuable role. I guess this is a little bit of an advertisement here in helping individuals build awareness, develop mindfulness, and establish sustainable habits for emotional well-being, right? Before we jump into some of the ways why we do it and some of the ways that we can help ourselves, This is a TED Talk with 12 million views. I don't know if you know who Judd Brewer is. He's a neuroscientist, a very smart guy out of Yale. He's got a 12 million view TED Talk that talks about simple way to break a bad habit. He actually goes into emotional eating in his definition here. He talks about how the brain has evolved over the course of hundreds and thousands of millions of years, and how we learn, and I'll just read, these are verbatim his words. Our brains, we see food, we eat the food, we feel good, and then we repeat. We are remembering where the food is, the trigger, the behavior, the reward. Simple, right? Well, after a while, our creative brains say, you know what? You can use this information for more than just remembering where the food is. You know, the next time you feel bad, why don't you try eating something good so you feel better? We thank our brains for the great idea. Try this and quickly learn that if we eat chocolate or ice cream or something else that's delicious but probably unhealthy, when we're mad or sad, we feel better. The same process, just a different trigger. This happens over the course of days, weeks, months, and years until it really becomes embedded into our brains. Instead of this hunger signal coming from our stomach, this emotional signal of feeling sad or having a negative emotional state triggers the urge to eat to help us to feel better, right? So why we eat when we feel bad. So here's some of the reasons people turn to food for emotional comfort rather than solely for hunger. A lot of these are, there's a lot of intersection on a lot of these. The first one is emotional regulation. So for comfort, certain foods, especially those high in sugar and fat, can trigger the release of feel-good neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. This creates a temporary sense of comfort and pleasure, providing emotional relief, right? So the first one is emotional regulation. The second one is stress response. So as we're stressed out, the stress activates the body's fight or flight response, leading to the release of cortisol. This cortisol can increase cravings for energy-dense foods, particularly those rich in sugar, right? So if you're in a very stressful environment, cortisol then makes you want the sugar and such. Here's one that I hadn't thought about until I did some of the research: associations and conditioning, right? So learned behavior. Over time, individuals may develop associations between specific emotions and certain foods as a result of learned behaviors or cultural influences. For example, celebrating with cake during happy occasions. These then become habitual responses. And the last one I have is just a coping mechanism. So again, there's a lot of overlap here. The distraction, eating can serve as a distraction from negative emotions or stressors, providing a temporary escape from the emotional discomfort. Okay. So I have on here 6 strategies on this presentation, and there's probably a lot more than that. And I'd really be open to anything that you guys have to add to this to minimize emotional eating, right? So I want to just take a moment on this slide and just say, the goal here is not to go from having a level of stress that's an 8 or a 9 out of 10 to having a level of stress that's a 0 or 1 out of 10, right? The goal here is to improve your ability to manage the stress, to mitigate the stress, because when you get to, I'm just using these abstract numbers, but when you get to a level of, let's say, 7 or 8, then you're at a place where you really need to grab that candy or pizza or ice cream or what have you, right? So if we can get that level of an 8 of stress to go to a level of 4 or 5 or 6, right? That could help us significantly in the process that we're doing, and therefore we don't actually reach for the pizza or the candy or the ice cream, right? So the goal, just like I say in a lot of the coaching calls, is progress, not perfection. All right. So strategy, getting to the root cause. So one of the aha moments that I kind of knew, but it really, basically it was just so obvious. I had just a strong sense of awareness when I was studying this last month with my friend. And that is, a lot of times as a coach, and I think there's some validity to this, a lot of times as a coach, I will, somebody will say, you know what, I reach for ice cream every night when I go to bed. I got to have my scoop of ice cream. And Mike, I don't want to do that anymore. What can I do to stop that? And I'll say, okay, well, roughly how many nights a week are you doing this? And the response is, well, it's usually around 5 nights a week. I'm like, oh, okay. So the first thing I go to is, okay, what can you do to go to 3? Like, how can we really white knuckle it and go to 3? And I think there is some validity to that. But instead of addressing the action or the behavior, it's probably more important that I say, okay, let's see what's causing this to happen in the first place, i.e., the root cause, because you were stressed out, or you were in a negative emotional state, or you were lonely, or what have you. Dealing with and working towards mitigating that emotional state, lessening it, ameliorating it, that's where we can get some real progress towards the actions and behaviors versus, well, let's just white knuckle it. Certainly there's discipline, certainly there's energy that needs to be happening, but the strategy really for me as a coach now is to say, let's go under the first layer of the action and see what's really causing you to be in that place, that negative state in the first place. So I've got 2 slides on the first one about mindful eating, just being aware, the strategy of really using mindful eating as a tool to combat emotional eating, paying attention to what you're eating. Now, this is supposed to be a guy that's watching a football game and he's real excited and he's consuming, it looks like a whole bunch of pasta. This is an AI generated image. I thought it was kind of cool. So not even paying attention to hunger, fullness cues. I've had calls with clients. I've had conversations with friends. I didn't even pay attention. The whole bag of chips was gone because I was focused on TV or what have you. And the reason I have 2 slides here is because the second slide shows a gentleman that's driving a truck and eating pizza at the same time, right? So paying attention to what you're eating and what you're doing. So the big picture on these first 2 slides is really mindful eating, being aware. That is so important as it relates to what's happening here. If we're not aware of what's going on with our thoughts, our emotions, our focus, then we got no place that we can even start. So awareness is really vital and key. Number 2 is creating healthy habits, right? Another strategy to help you and support you to minimize emotional eating is establishing a routine and finding alternative activities during emotional moments. Example, enjoying physical activities to manage stress, going for a walk, grabbing a glass of water, right? Talking to a friend. All those things are healthy alternatives versus reaching for the pizza or the ice cream or what have you. So number 2 is creating healthy habits. Number 3, yes, these are all AI generated images. Number 3 is building emotional resilience, right? So emotional resilience can be enhanced through practices like meditation, deep breathing, really going inward and focusing on your breath, focusing on what you can do to minimize your level of stress in your life, right? Those are all routines that you can do to help you to build resilience, emotional resilience. I already kind of mentioned this before when I said maybe you could call a friend. Social support. The role of social connections and emotional well-being is so incredibly strong. If you're going through a challenge in your life, if you've got a buddy, if you've got a friend, or even several, again, one of the underlying themes of why we have this call, usually the first Tuesday of the month, is the social support that we can offer to each other. I always said when I was really busy in my pharmacies back in the day as a pharmacist, it was I was stressed out. I would much rather be stressed out and so incredibly busy with 5 or 6 other people around me versus stressed out and incredibly busy just by myself, right? Because the ship may be going down, but at least we're all going down together. So social support, of course, is incredibly important as well. So journaling, keeping a food and emotion journal to identify patterns and triggers. So this also brings up awareness, that brings up intentionality. You could also do this with gratitude. There's a lot of things just taking pen to paper that can help you as far as wiring your brain and really making that impact to having that level of awareness of what's really going on. So the 5th strategy potentially is journaling in the process of recognizing what's happening. And the last one is a little bit different as far as the strategy goes, but really creating a healthy snack stash, right? What can I do to stock up with nutritional snacks to turn when emotional eating urges strikes to me grabbing some nuts or me grabbing something healthy, right? A piece of fruit or some veggies or what have you, because I'm going to want to have something that I'm crunching on in my mouth. I might as well make something like that a little bit more healthy versus the M&Ms or what have you. Not quite the same dopamine hit for sure, but this is a way to help and support yourself towards your health and wellness goals as well. So, all right, so those are the 6 strategies on your slide. Mindful eating, being aware, number 2 is creating healthy habits. Number 3 is resilience, meditation, breathing exercise. Number 4 is social support. Number 5 is journaling. And identifying triggers and patterns. And number 6 is having a healthy snack stash, right? So the first question I have for you, and I can get you guys to unmute your phones. Let me ask you, the first question is, what is something on here that resonates with you? Either you've had experience with it in the past and you've had some success with it, or it's something you hadn't thought about. You're considering, hey, maybe that's something I can maybe try to help and support myself as you're working towards emotional eating and the challenges that that can provide. What comes to mind for you guys?
Can you give me the question one more time? I was distracted with
No problem. Yeah, no
turning on
problem at all.
my mute.
No problem at all. So there's 6 strategies. Can you guys see the slide, the 6 strategies?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so of the 6 strategies that are on the slide, is there one on there that resonates with you that you've tried in the past that's worked well for you to help you and support you? Or is there one that you're reading on there that you're like, hey, that's one that I kind of want to try, and here's why? What do you guys think?
Well, the environmental control is always huge in my life,
Mhm.
because I know I'm gonna sometimes go into patterns of eating and emotional eating a lot. So
Okay.
the healthy snack
Yeah.
stash or the environmental control is big, is huge.
Yeah. So what do you do in your own life or have done that you feel like has really brought you some success with regards to environmental control, Bev, that's helped you and supported you?
Well, not having anything in my car unless it's
Okay. Yeah.
unless nuts or fruit or whatever, carrots or whatever, but not having anything in my car because that's really an easy place to get into the snacks if I've got them in my car.
Gotcha.
And then at home, it would just be the same thing, just having them available and not having um, foods that are non-compliant and that are dangerous
Yeah.
foods, or not dangerous, but you know what I mean.
Of course. Yeah, definitely.
Slippery slope foods.
Of course. Yeah. And what does Chef AJ say?
If
If
it's in your
in
house,
your house, it's in your mouth.
that's right.
Absolutely. And you know, I'm pretty good with I mean, I'm not bragging here, but I've had pretty good self-control, but I can guarantee you after about a week, if it's in my house, it's in my mouth. So it's just tough, right? You pull open that drawer when you're, I don't know, craving something or not in a good place or what have you. And this is the candy bar that you know you weren't going to eat until 2027. And you know, a week into 2024, it's already gone. So absolutely, positively. Cool. Thank you for sharing, Bev. That's awesome. All right. What else comes to mind for folks of this particular slide that maybe resonates with them?
I think for me, number one, mindful eating resonates with me because I think it's almost the most difficult for me because I live alone. And so it's
Mhm.
very easy for me when I socially eat at a restaurant or at someone else's house to have conversation and to talk. But when I'm eating alone, like there's no, interruptions or stopping me from just continuously eating or like eating very fast and not like digesting my food first and feeling
Gotcha.
full. Um, and so one thing that someone taught me early on, which I don't do, but I should do, and I will share this tip, is like every time when you're eating alone, you take a bite, you actually put your utensil down. So you put your fork down, you grab a glass of water, you grab a sip
Mm,
of your drink, and then you pick it back up. So at least there's like some time in
yeah.
between bites rather than just kind of shoveling food in your mouth.
Yeah. I had not heard that before. That's pretty cool. So just naturally, it gives you a little bit more time to just process the food, think about the food, have some water or what have you. So yeah, that's cool. And have you tried that in the past, I guess, or during meals and such? I know you've heard about it, but have you ever tried it?
Yeah, I think I used to do it eating out a
Mhm.
lot, and so it's helped to like slow me down eating out because I'm like generally a fast eater.
Yeah.
But at home I haven't done it, but this like call is like honestly triggering me and I can try to do be better and report back before our
Yeah.
next call because like I
Sure.
said, it's so easy just like sitting in front of the TV watching Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy to just eat my dinner without
Yeah.
anyone talking to me, any interruptions. And so I'm just continuously eating and finding food before I
Right.
even digest the food I've already eaten.
Yeah. Love that. Very cool. Yeah, I'd love to hear from you with how that works. Just if you're open to just a little feedback, is that okay?
Yes.
So just some feedback or a tip in this regard. Let's just say this is something you want to start working towards. My recommendation, and it just depends on the person. This is a very personality driven thing, so this may not work for you, but my recommendation is you identify that meal or a couple of meals in the week where you just know that you're going to be doing this, right? And let's just say it's, I don't know, at home. Let's say it's Monday and Wednesday evening meals or what have you, and you literally set your alarm and you plan it and you organize it so this is not something that's forgotten, because it's easy to forget, of course. And when you have that meal, you know, going into that, here's what your practice session. It could be as small as just one meal a week initially. And then, you know, you just take that time to reflect on how it went, where did it go well, where did it not go well, or what have you, and build upon that. Just starting small and being aware, not only during the process, which is the point, but also afterwards. You know, how did that go, and where did I find there was benefit there, or was there any benefit there? That will potentially reinforce that behavior, and then potentially over the course of a couple, 2 or 3 weeks, you get a few days under your belt, then this potentially could start broadening out to other days if you wanted to, or what have you. I feel most people with really good enthusiasm are like, I'm all in. And then, you know, 2 or 3 weeks later, just like we do with our New Year's resolutions, it begins to fizzle. And then shame and I can't do this and I'm frustrated or what have you comes into play. So that, I don't know if that's going to be helpful or not, but that's just some things off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. And then also like switching up the variety of meals. Like I'm thinking about like eating dinners now and like being more mindful during dinners. But I eat breakfast every day at the office too, and I eat that alone, just like at my
Okay.
desk. Like
Yeah.
I'm like running to a meeting and I'm like shoveling my omelet into my
Yeah.
desk or into my yeah.
Totally.
So I think that's, yeah, a variety of meals as well could help.
Cool. Very cool. Very
Well,
cool.
can I offer an idea? Maybe, I mean, it's
Of
probably not.
course.
I eating in front of the TV is really, I think, hard because, you know, what you just said, you want to just eat it and watch TV, and you're really not mindful of what you're eating hardly at all.
Mhm.
So, is it possible ever to not even turn on the TV, but maybe turn on music, or
Mhm.
or or at least turn the volume down of the TV, so
Yeah.
that you're not auditorily out there and not paying attention. I mean, at least cut down the TV experience to some extent, whether it be auditory, whether it be visual, whether it be both, whether it be other music. And then while you're eating, to literally, before, of course, we eat, think about the gratitude or whatever. And then literally every bite that you eat, taste it and
Mhm.
really be aware of what it tastes like on your tongue and the textures and all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
sort of
I
extreme, but
no, I don't think that's extreme. I think that's like a very solid suggestion.
Mhm.
I'll have to time it with watching Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, of course, because I try to watch that. But
or okay, if you want to do it in front of the TV, then when it comes to commercial break, just go to the commercial break and then get into that zone.
yeah,
But that's
no,
only
that's
if
a
you've
great
got anything
suggestion.
left over. If you've got anything left over from when it started.
Yeah, that's great.
Very cool. Very cool. That's great. Well, I appreciate your openness to trying this and experimenting with something you remember from back in the day, and just potentially, you know, whatever makes sense for you to just start bridging that gap and helping you with that sense of awareness. Helen, that's awesome. So very cool and great idea from Bev. Yeah, just removing those distractions altogether. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, but before I do, I want to just offer up, anybody else come to mind as anything on this slide that maybe resonates with them that they've tried in the past that they felt was helpful, or something they would like to maybe try or experiment with because they're interested and curious about it.
The journaling.
Tell me about that.
I think it'd be interesting. Now, I'm not great at journaling, but I think it would be interesting to also look at what was going on with me when I chose a sweet snack
Okay.
versus a salty snack also.
Okay. Yeah. So what's going on emotionally when you're reaching for various sweet or salty snacks?
Yeah, yeah, which
Okay.
I don't know if that has any, I mean, I don't, it might, because normally it is sweet stuff, but
Okay, yeah,
yeah,
very
That's
cool.
mindful, that's mindful eating with the journaling. I mean, that's really
Yeah.
excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a really good avenue to help build that awareness of what's going on, between the ears and just putting that down on paper. And just being very mindful, like you said, Karen, that's exactly right. So very cool. Okay, anybody else? All right, so share your experience. What comes to mind? What emotions tend to trigger your desire to eat emotionally, right? Have you noticed a specific pattern or situation that leads to emotional eating for you personally, right? I'm just going to throw out there for myself real quick. When I get bored, so not necessarily a horrible emotional state, but not a great one, I go reaching for something to get me out of my boredom state, right? Which is usually the pantry, which usually doesn't have good healthy foods in it. So that's just me. But what comes to mind for you guys? What emotions tend to trigger your own desire to eat emotionally eating?
mine
I would,
is when I'm overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed?
Yeah, Yeah.
Tell about it. Tell us about maybe a time where you felt like, here's where I was overwhelmed, and this is what I did because of that. Paint that
daily.
picture.
Um, um, well, like I have, because I've kind of transitioned here part-time to Colorado. So
Yeah,
there's all, like the boxes.
yeah,
The boxes. I would rather stick my head in the pantry than to deal with the boxes.
hundreds of boxes.
Hundreds of boxes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, when I get overwhelmed with even like trying to find a ticket to New Zealand, just
hmm,
the options. So then
yeah,
I'll find,
yeah.
I think I need something to eat so I can think about this.
There we go.
It's always, I think I need something to eat. Yeah.
Yeah, great examples. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's great. Who else comes to mind with emotions that get triggered?
well, in honesty, complete honesty, every emotion triggers eating for me or has in the past. That's been a huge thing that I've been working on.
Sure.
But the ones that probably hurt me the most would be like when I'm angry
Hmm.
or when I'm in a pity party,
Okay.
because then I'll get into whatever. Because if I'm angry, because especially if it's because, like my husband, bless his heart, if he said something that's made me mad, or even if there was one instance, I remember a couple instances where people have actually said things about what I was eating,
Yeah.
and then that anger becomes the rebellious child completely, and
There
it's
we
like,
go.
you know, no,
Yeah,
I'll show you, by golly. But the only person it's really hurting is me. So
absolutely.
anger is a huge one, and then pity parties. When I get into my little mini pity parties, those are
Hmm.
huge.
And then you're
And
reaching for something to help you feel better.
yeah, comfort food
Yeah,
sometimes, and then also things like loneliness and worry. But I mean, and really, it's any emotion, to be quite honest. But
sure.
probably the most difficult ones to deal with, like you said too, boredom. I mean,
Hmm.
but anger or sadness or self pity or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Cool. Anybody else that that resonates with a particular emotion that tends to trigger them to reach for something to put in their mouths and make them feel better?
I would say for me, kind of the opposite is like happiness. Like when I eat, I feel
Okay.
happy, and when I'm happy, I like to eat, like socially or with
Yeah,
family. Like I resonated with like associating food with like holidays or
there we go.
celebrations, and so
Yeah,
I thought that was that spoke to me.
yeah. So like that boy with the birthday cake, right?
Yeah.
And the picture on the slide was, him celebrating his birthday. He's happy. He associates that with the food, and those things tie together. So very cool. Okay, so healthy coping mechanisms. So what are some alternative activities or coping mechanisms that you've found or that you're thinking about that could be helping you with effectively managing emotions without turning to food. What comes to mind is maybe these are what we call, the healthy habits per se. What are just some ideas, not necessarily looking for a commitment, but just some thoughts and ideas that come to mind for you of what you or anybody who's struggling or has a challenge with emotional eating could do to help them? Alternative activities. What do you think?
Well, I have one. I have crocheted on and off for 50 years and more off than on, but
Okay.
I know how to crochet.
Yeah.
Um, and, I have recently I picked up an unfinished project and now I've almost finished it. Because, at night, whether it's boredom because there's really not much, on TV
Right.
or, there's not a movie that interests me or something. But yeah, like I will want to snack. And
Mhm.
um, I do always have popcorn and I have almonds because if I have to snack, I have to snack. At least that's not too bad.
Sure.
But finding an alternative, like doing something with your hands, a craft,
Yeah.
typing something up on so my hands are busy and I'm not wanting to grab something and put it in my mouth.
Yeah.
That's how I cope. So
Love that. Thank you for sharing that. I heard two strategies there. I heard number one, doing some stuff with your hands that you've been doing for 50 years, which is incredibly exciting. And number two, reaching for a snack that maybe isn't deplorable, but it's just kind of okay, right?
yeah.
As in the popcorn or the almonds or what have you. So
Mhm.
that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So what are you making crochet wise?
A sweater.
That's very cool.
And it's pretty much done now, except I have to do the trim on the sleeves and
Gotcha.
the other part. So I mean I made both my grandkids, blankets before they were
Yeah.
born. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm on and off with it.
Yeah.
I'm not somebody who does it all the time, but I
Right.
like to do projects here and there.
That's
So
wonderful. That's great. Well, thank you for sharing that, Claire. That's awesome.
sure.
Okay. Anybody else with some alternative activities?
Well, definitely crafts is fantastic. But along with that, somebody else had said putting music on and maybe dancing or just turning music on just to get mentally away from the food idea. Also just reading or movement, taking a walk or
Yeah.
doing exercises instead of like while you're watching TV,
Yeah.
do some hand weights or something as opposed to that fork and knife and spoon, especially
Right. How do you think, because I heard some really great ideas there, right? I heard music, I heard dancing, I heard weightlifting, I heard reading, I heard movement, I heard walking. What do you think, Bev, if you are to say, you know what, instead of me grabbing X to eat, which is not going to be as healthy for me, I'm going to do, whatever that is. Let's just say it's listening to your favorite song or what have you. How do you set that up to support yourself? What makes the most sense for you? And I'm just using the music piece. It could be something
Well,
else that makes more sense.
the music piece would not be necessarily going to my favorite song just because it would be too much work.
Gotcha.
So it would be just turning on the radio or turning on a CD. I do have a CD player still in my car. I am
Cool.
still, one of those old folks that hasn't gotten past CDs yet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just popping on a CD or just turning on the radio. If
Mhm.
I'm in my car, and then at home, it might be a more directed CD where I would dance or whatever, maybe to
Mhm.
it,
Yeah.
or at least move, if not dance.
So do you think that's awesome. I'm just curious how this happens. It's 8 o'clock at night and you hear something on the radio that you don't like because they say something stupid. It puts you in a bad place, let's just say. What happens then for you to put yourself in a better place? You see what I'm saying? I'm just trying to think of how this happens to help you and support you versus grabbing for that food. What do you think?
Well, I wouldn't be hearing anything bad on the radio. I'd be hearing something bad maybe on TV, or I'd be
Okay.
hearing something bad from my husband or whatever. But
Right.
not
I didn't want to go there.
well, that's okay. You can go there. No, it would just be I think it's just being aware of
There you go.
whenever there's something that's triggering me, whatever that may be.
Yeah, yeah,
And just, trying to separate myself out from that
yeah.
and just trying to look at it and
I love that.
stay in my sage thinking as opposed to my, what is that word, those words? What's the thing?
Saboteur?
Yeah, instead of our saboteurs, instead of letting the saboteurs go wild and crazy, just
Yeah.
sort of stay in the sage thinking and try to have some sense and sensibility,
Mhm.
which, usually when I'm ready for emotional eating, sense and sensibility's kind of gone out the window. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but I love how you were saying just being in a state of awareness of what's going on with your thoughts. So it helps you to make that conscious, better choice, healthier choice to go to music or what have you, versus not even being aware and being oblivious to it. But you're right. Sometimes we get in an emotional state where sense and sensibility are pretty much out the window, which is fortunately sometimes common. So, okay. So mindful eating practice. Can anybody on the call share an experience where a mindful eating helped you avoid emotional eating? What comes to mind?
Well, I think one of the first things I think about is not having readily available bad foods per se
Okay.
in your house. So
Yeah,
if I'm in that state, which could be any emotion or whatever, and I go to the refrigerator, there better be some grapes, carrots,
there we go. Yeah.
sugar free. I mean, I'm thinking of everything that, okay, if I'm gonna do it, which I'm probably not hungry anyway, and I'm gonna grab it and do that versus if there was Hostess cupcakes or
There we
donuts
go.
or something else. So because if it is in my house, it will be eaten. So
Yeah,
I think it's just more of having those healthy things available,
huge.
and then you set that mindful eating right away. So
Yeah, no question. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. Anybody else come to mind as far as what you can share as an experience where mindful eating has helped you to avoid emotional eating? Okay, I think this might be, yeah. Yeah, we're almost there. So can anybody share me a small victory you've achieved by minimizing emotional eating, right? How can we celebrate them together? What comes to mind for you is where this was a win? It does not have to be that you ran a marathon or something huge, but what's a small victory that you can think about in the past where you achieved minimizing emotional eating? What comes to mind?
not allowing myself to go through a drive-through at that
Okay.
point. I mean, because that can be huge because often I'm out and about. So just not allowing myself to go through the drive-throughs, or if I'm gonna go through a drive-through, go to some place like Mimosa where I can get, sushi that's veggie sushi or whatever.
Right. That's a great example of a small victory where you got it, right? And
Instead of the
recognizing
Dairy
small
Queen.
victories is huge. What's that?
Instead of the Dairy Queen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Very cool. Anybody else as far as celebrating success and small victories?
I think grabbing the popcorn
Okay.
instead of maybe even hopping in the car and going for the pastry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, or grabbing the popcorn instead of throwing a pizza in.
There we go. So
Yeah.
choosing a more healthy option and being intentional about it. Very cool. Cool.
A victory that I had, one of my struggles as a home health nurse was I was always working through lunch
Mm-hmm.
and skipping lunch. And when I got more intentional about it, I would pack a lunch, plant-based lunch, and in an effort for better self-care, I would park and turn everything off, which is really difficult.
Yeah.
Because I'm so used to multitasking, it was part of my career, efficiency, that if I didn't keep 10 plates spinning, then I'd have to come back and still deal with the 8 plates that,
Absolutely.
whatever. And so I would do so many things at the same time. I mean, so if I did eat at all, it was usually driving and also listening to whatever. And so to really get off the grid, and to stop and to turn off other distractions, would absolutely be kind of a sweet spot for me. And I
Definitely.
could be satisfied with what I brought and then get back to it. And even now I struggle with the phone. You
Mhm.
know, I may not be watching TV, but that computer in my pocket,
There we
uh,
go.
I feel that if I'm still in that multitask mindset, which has been hard to turn off even in retirement, that I will more likely struggle with stopping when the food in front of me runs out, rather than add something so that I have something, to work on while I finish my article or my podcast, right?
Oh, yeah.
To finish
Absolutely.
only what you have brought to the table or the counter or wherever you're eating.
Yeah.
That's where I'm focusing, and with mixed success, because
Yeah.
the phone and its dopamine draw is an issue for me. So
No
it's
question.
good for me to tell on that, because it continues to be a stress, or I mean a struggle.
Yeah, thanks for the vulnerability and thanks for sharing that, because I'm right there with you. You know, a lot of times we're talking about Helen and the Wheel of Fortune. I'm thinking I got the phone in my hand and I'm like, I'm not even paying attention to this food I'm shoveling in my mouth. So I sometimes just need to put it down or put it away. And I like your call out about, you're going to have as much as you have in front of you. So if you got a long podcast or what have you, it's going to even extend it that way with that distraction. So very, very cool. Any other celebrating of successes with small victories to achieve minimizing emotional eating? Okay. All right. So this is the second to last slide. The last slide is just a few comments I've got for you guys. So making progress, right? So this is just sharing. If you want to share, what is one small thing that you feel that you can commit to? I'm not taking notes. I promise you, I will not follow up to say, did you do that thing? But I'm just sharing here with social commitment here. What's one small thing that you feel like you can commit to in helping you make progress in mitigating emotional eating? Is there anybody on here that's willing to say, here's something Helen actually already kind of sort of did, but anybody here that wants to share, yeah, here's something I think I can do to help and support myself in this capacity?
One book that I have that's an excellent book. In fact, I actually have it with me. It's called Eat What You Want, or wait, it's called, I don't know if you can see that. Eat What You Love, Love What You Eat. And it's really about anything related to food and emotional eating, or other kinds of issues with food. But one of the things that it talks about, it goes to where you get to where you always are asking yourself, am I hungry? And then you actually put yourself
Okay.
on that hunger scale
Okay.
of anywhere from 0 to 10, with 10
Okay.
being like, I want to eat it right now and I don't care what it is, and
Gotcha.
so it does help to actually ask yourself the question, am I hungry? And if I'm not hungry, or if I'm not hungry, what am I hungry for? What am I needing right now?
Yeah,
So it's part of mindfulness.
it is. Yeah.
But the scale is also helpful, because they'll say not to really eat until you're really to the 6 or something,
Mhm. Okay. So like a scale of 1 to 10 is what you mean, right?
Yeah. So
Okay.
if it's just a 2 or 3 or 4,
Okay.
then I mean, it's just one little tool. The other
Yeah.
tool is
Another way to
well,
build
there's
awareness, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I think Dr. Furman talks about that true hunger versus being bored and thinking you're hungry and just wanted to put something in your mouth. And again, it's all about that awareness that you're sharing, Bev. That's so great. Cool. Anybody else?
Well, what I'm willing to do, because I think it would help me anyway, is, you know, drink more water. I just dehydrate so easily.
Gotcha.
And, I had an issue a couple of weeks ago where I almost fainted, and I was just dehydrated. I just, I had been sick, but, I, and I thought I was drinking enough water, but I think sometimes too, I get that feeling that I want something, and maybe I really need to just drink some water.
Yeah.
and then see if I'm hungry. So, and I've actually been kind of trying to do that. When I get up in the morning, I drink a lot of water before I do anything,
Okay.
and usually I hit the coffee first. So, so I'm going to commit to, before I grab a snack or popcorn or almonds or whatever, is having to drink water first and see if that's what's going on.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's fantastic. There is a psychologist, and I can't remember, her name is Jen. I can't remember her last name. And she has struggled with emotional eating for a lot of her life. She's probably in her 40s now. And she has, very similar to about grabbing the glass of water, Claire, she has to have a baked potato. If she's like, okay, I'm hungry and I'm voracious and I'm going to be eating or what have you. Her thing is, before I'm grabbing the candy or the ice cream, I'm not saying I'm not going to have it, but I got to have the baked potato first. And of course, it's not loaded with, the junk, the cheese and the sour cream and the bacon and such. But she has a baked potato, and she goes, and a lot of times I'm done. I'm like, okay, well, I'm actually in a much better place now, or what have you. So that's just a tidbit that she has used that I've heard about, that just kind of made me think about that as you were talking about water. So maybe one final comment before we go to the last slide. Anybody else have one small thing that you feel you can commit to?
I will commit to, before I grab sugar, I will think about what's going on and write it down.
Like
Because
on your
sometimes it
journal?
might just be that I've got a sweet tooth.
Cool.
But other times it's somebody's irritated me.
Yeah, very good. Very cool. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. So being intentional, building that awareness, maybe documenting or journaling. Hey, before I grab this, at least I got to write this down, where my thoughts are, or what have you. So
Yeah.
love that. Cool. All right. So as we close, just a real quick thank you to you guys for joining the call. Appreciate everybody's openness and willingness to explore this topic. As we mentioned several times on the call, the awareness piece is absolutely huge in all of this, right? It's incredibly important that we're aware of what's going on with our thoughts, and just knowing that small steps towards change can make a big difference to huge change over the course of time, right? So it's just looking at your intentions. Where's your commitment regarding your health and your wellness? Again, thank you guys so much for your time, your authenticity, and your dedication to your personal growth. And we will close it out.
Thank you,
Thank
Mike.
So
Thank
good.
you, Mike.
So good to
Thank
visit with
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
You bet.
Bye, Coach
Take care.
Mike.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.